everyone out there. We are coming to you from the Restored Table, Conversations with Coaches. And anything at this table that it's an open conversation. We like to talk about all kinds of topics that dig deep and also inspire us. I'm Donna Fisher. I'm a Canadian. I am an identity coach. We are all together trained by the same coach who trained us from the Netherlands. And so we have joined together at this table, and we have Kimberly Swaim and Ann Pierce. Kimberly, tell us tell us a little bit about your coaching style, and then Ann.
So I am a relationship and intimacy coach. I love to help people connect and learn how to communicate better with the people that they are in daily relationships with, or even relationships that have been broken that need to be reconciled. So that is what I do.
Awesome. Ann, tell us about you.
And I'm a strategy coach, and I like to come along people where you don't know where to start. Sometimes you are just so overwhelmed. And so we're going to sit together. We're going to discern where the starting position would be for you to get you unstuck and over the bridge of being stuck and moving on to the place where you feel you are in control and that you have a destiny in front of you.
Awesome. So today at the table, we will be here for about 45, 50 minutes. And we have been talking at the table about hopes and dreams. And we've had a few guests on. You can see the replays in our Restored Table Facebook page anytime. And these also are being streamed in live into YouTube. But today we're going to continue on just with ourselves here at the table, and we're going to just tell you a little bit more about ourselves and the process of dreams and hopes in our own lives. So I'm going to go first, and I'm going to share with you the fact that dreams and hopes have ebbed and flowed in life. And I think especially as a mom, as a woman who has a family, oftentimes in some ways, I have felt like I'm the emotional, almost cheerleader of the family. If dad gets busy working or whatever, and for my family, my husband came from where he came from. I'm coming from my past. And so in my life growing up, I was a real big dreamer, a visionary, a creative type person, but I was a big dreamer. And my husband was not as big a dreamer as I was. And then life happens, and life was hard. We had 5 children and all of those scenarios. And it isn't until now, in this age of life, where I actually moved to the middle of Canada, in a place where it's more of an untouched place than the eastern part of Canada. And so it's like in the land, so to speak, it's like going back 4 and 5 decades, because just the look of the land, it's untouched, And so this started triggering things in my memory. And as I went back in my memory, after several years here, I realized I was enjoying for the first time going back into my past and seeing things, and where I grew up, as from to where I raised my children, and all of those things, memories started coming back in a new way. And so because of all kinds of, tragedy, trauma, life, whatever, there were lots of negative things pressing down on my life. As I arrived here and I chose to go back and look at things in my life history, I began to see and enjoy things back there. I would go back to my home where I grew up. I would go back to our first home where we had our children. Different things would trigger good memories where once I had maybe been flooded with bad memories only. And when I started to remember the good things back there, because they were there, but the bad or the negative experiences were overwhelming. And even conversation was overwhelming the good. But going back and seeing the value of how I was raised, even, the fact that I went to camp every summer, or I had horses in my backyard. I had my own cow. I had ducks or chickens or dogs or cat. I had anything I wanted in that regard. So those began to feed and restore a lot of things that I felt had been crushed or lost. And then I began to notice, I knew that I had to obtain the moments, the present moments, in a positive light. I had to go back and regain positive view of my past. But then I needed to shift to my future, where a lot of those dreams or visions that you have when you're younger, they were more free flowing. And as you get older and life can run rough trot over you, those dreams and visions began to just lay dormant or get confused or not even be there in some respects. And I knew that I had to almost shift out of my past. I'd gained that good vision of it. I had to shift, retain the present moment of value, but shift into hope and vision in my future. And I can now do it, where it was quite dormant before for a person who is was a big creative dreamer. They were almost hopeless. And, we all know those feelings of too good to be true. I didn't have a lot of it, but I know they were there. And so now I'm practicing, literally practicing, envisioning my future and what it can look like. And then I stay there, and then I get myself into my future. So that's where I'm at right now. That's where I've been for the last 2 years anyway. And I don't think I would be here in this way had I not gotten through that process. But I needed to go back and take the value of what was good, and there was good. So that's my story, Kim. What about you?
I love that because it flows so well into my story as well. I think there's a similar thread. This afternoon, as I was getting ready, so it's afternoon my time, and as I was getting ready to come to the table, I recognized, like, oh man, I know that Donna and Ann are a couple hours behind me, and they grab coffee usually, and I grab water. And for those people who are joining us from Europe, my girlfriends, they're usually take a cup of tea in the afternoon or late evening. And so they're probably grabbing tea. And it made me think about, the fact that I could grab a mug and throw water in it and come to the table and you guys wouldn't know. But I love collecting mugs. And I have for years and years. My husband, it's something that he and I loved to do together. We would grab a mug from wherever we were. So every journey, we would grab a mug. And usually it was like, a Starbucks mug. But then he grabbed this Starbucks mug because it reminded us of going to see the Northern Lights together in Norway. So, there's really cool visions there for me. And we grabbed a mug from Ireland and from Switzerland because we were stationed over in Europe. For those who don't know us, we lived in Germany for 3 years. So no, I don't have all the money in the world, and my husband and I don't get to go on these romantic, amazing trips. We have 4 children. We're on one income, and God placed us in Germany, and we were able to take advantage of some things before COVID shut everything down. And we would go on these phenomenal vacations. But similar to what Donna was saying, I grab mugs at these places even when the trip didn't seem like the trip of a lifetime in the moment. there were a lot of hurts. There were a lot of tears. There were 4 kids always involved, except the Norway trip. It was just he and I. But even at that, it wasn't perfect. And so we can look at the mug that someone's bringing to the table and be like, wow, that person, they seem to have it all together, because you're looking out the outside. And when I come to the table and I'm bringing a cup and it's half full, it can feel in the moment half empty, and you can see through it and you can see, oh, she's filling herself with some water. But you don't know for sure if that's water or vodka. Like, am I filling myself up with good nutrition, water that like runs through me and helps get rid of the impurities? Or am I filling myself up with poison? So when I was coming to the table today and I was thinking about like, I have all these mugs and oh my goodness. And then I realized, man, these mugs tell a story. These mugs each have a story. And if I pull this mug from Switzerland and I am like, we went camping with 6 people, 4 children and my husband and I, and it was awful in the moment. I mean, awful. We lived on a mountaintop for 5 days. It sounds glorious. But my husband and I were not healthy in our marriage. And there were a lot of arguments, and our kids were witnessing all of it, because if you guys have ever been camping, there's a little stress that comes along with setting up camp and who starts the fire and who maintains the fire. And you have 4 children poking in a fire, like, right? So I can look back. So I can look back at this particular trip and be like, wow, there's a lot of hurt attached. But now that I'm beyond it, and I can look back and be like, we were literally sitting really close to the most beautiful place on earth for an entire week with all 6 of us. In the moment, it all seemed so big and daunting and overwhelming. I thought that our marriage was going to end in that trip. But a year and a half later, we're still together. We're healthier than we've ever been. And that trip, I can see, wow, he went on a one-on-one hike with my oldest son, and they got to fly his drone, and they have drone footage from the Alps. Wow. Not just the Alps in Switzerland, but they could also go over into Italy and into France from where we were, and they have that bird's eye view. Wow. Because we were there. And so that trip became very special for them. And in the moment, I was feeling all the hurt and pain. But now when I can step back out of it and look from a healthier place back into those places. But you know what? Really, I felt like in those moments, and there were many, many, many moments in my life where I was in it, and it felt like my dreams were being smushed. I mean, who wouldn't want to go to Switzerland and camp, like backpack camp with their family for an entire week and say, oh, we survived and it was amazing? That was a dream that I had had for a long, long time. And then it came true, and I was in it, and everything in me was like, that was the worst experience of my life. That was horrific. It's because my dream was trying to be like smushed out and dampened. And when I can look back on it now, I'm like, actually, it was the most precious gift, that one of the most treasured moments of our time in Europe in 3 years was taking that camping trip. Yes, it was hard. Yes, it was stressful. Yes, communication patterns were horrible. But when I can look back from a healthy place, I'm like, it was actually one of those moments when we came down out of the mountain, my husband and I can say, we never want to do it that way again. Uh-huh. How are we going to make this better? And we were able to like start piecing things in our marriage back together because of such an awful experience. So we could have thrown in the towel. Instead, we put in the work. And I think that's where in that space, I had a dream. It was literally could have been destroying and destructive. And instead, now I have many more dreams. Like, I can't wait to go back to Switzerland. I can't wait to go back to Norway. I can't wait to go back to Ireland and all of those places that seemed hard, and move forward from there and just be like, actually, it might be hard in the moment, but it's really, really good because nothing's perfect. And so my perfectionism, my perfectionistic attitude has definitely taken a back seat. And so have my expectations. I've downshifted those a little bit too. So that's helpful. But that's where I'm at. And I hope my imagery of that stuff, like, you know, our expectations of the people around us, we don't really know what's inside their mug.
Right.
Their mug might look really perfect and put together on the outside, but you know, we don't know what's going on the inside. And so just to be careful as people are coming to our tables, whether it's our coffee table or our dinner table or, you know, a breakfast table when you go out, like, just be a little bit more gentle because, yeah, they might be hard and tough on the exterior or look like they have it all together, but you don't know really what's inside their cup. So, all right, Anne, that's my story. Now you get to share yours.
Well, I don't come with a mug, but I think of the image of a button, and many of us have really huge buttons, and we bump into each other's buttons, and it pushes our buttons, and it somehow pushes back that dream. And so my story is that I had the dream to go into nursing. I wanted to always become a nurse. That was a dream I had from the time I was really young. Maybe you've had a dream. And I ended up meeting my husband and we got married, and it was just into our marriage about 2 weeks when I just started to school that unfortunately everything shifted in his job, in his work. And so I had to leave nursing school and I was overwhelmed. And it felt like my dream never got picked up. And it's hard when you've had a dream and you feel like my dream's been crushed. It's now put on a shelf. It's going to sit there. And so then I had children. I had one daughter, and I hope to have 3 or 4 kids. I wanted to be a mom. I hoped that would be part of it. And you know what? That wasn't part of my story. And I knew the pain of having, you know, every month, oh, are we going to have another child? And that didn't come. And so I recognize with many who are out there that you have not had that joy of having 5 kids like Donna, 4 kids like Kimberly. I know what that's like to have that dream. And that's an ache in the very pit of your heart when you don't get to have those things. And so maybe it's that, maybe it's then finding out that there is a God in heaven because your husband's not dead and you're not in jail. Because that's where I was at when we had lots of tension. When you walk through those kind of trials, it's either going to make you really bitter or you're going to get better. You're going to dig into the bottom of who you are. And unfortunately, those stresses, my buttons were there and his buttons were there. And we just kept banging our buttons and we'd re-injure each other. And so I know I didn't help facilitate coming alongside of his dreams. And he was in his pain and his buttons, and he didn't, unfortunately, help facilitate me moving towards my dreams. And so I just want to relate to those that, and ask you, you know, drop in the chat. If your dreams have been crushed, do you have something that's a backup? Do you have something that you can step over to that can help facilitate your dream? I ended up years later having someone, you know, give me a really nice piece of what they thought they saw in me. You know, some people would say, excuse me, I see this in you, and we can take that or we can not take it. And they said, I really feel like you're going to be like a nurse, but you're going to come alongside people. And so the very thing that I had wanted just shifted differently. It didn't look like I had expected it to look. It looked totally different. A nurse? Wow, me? With people. And so that's what I did. I moved into heart healing with people for many, many years. And so where I wasn't in an emergency room, I wasn't in labor and delivery, but yet at the same time, I was seeing people's dreams get birthed. The very same kind of joy I would have felt if I'd been in labor and delivery as a nurse, or in emergency room when people were coming saying, my husband wants to leave me, or, I have just had this trauma happen in my life. Where do I go? What do I do? And so my dream shifted. And so sometimes the very thing that's in us, it gets to come out, but it comes in a totally different package than what we see, what we thought. Are we okay with that? Are we good with that? Are we good with when it shifts and it gives itself, it's almost like it morphs, it gets a new perspective, and we say, okay, I'm good with the fact that I'm crossing this bridge. Someone just said to me just a week ago, I see you, and there's like two fields, and you're going from one field to another field, but there's this tiny little footbridge, and you have to just make one tiny little step. Well, sometimes that one tiny little step, it can feel really daunting. And even now, as we're coming into becoming coaches, leaving behind heart healing, it's like a new language. I was talking with our coach the other day saying, it feels like I'm learning a totally different language and I'm having to reshift things. Again, it's something I've dreamed, but again, taking that and allowing the new package to not be daunting and to not want to have me hold back in fear and not go forward. So that's my perspective, my coming to the table with what dreams have looked like, and knowing that a big part of it, I need to get rid of my button, because that keeps me bumping into everybody else. And so on my heart healing journey, that's been a real big part of me being set free to actually give myself permission to walk on a road that takes me down the path to every dream that's been in my heart since I was a little girl, to finally come out, finally be seen.
There's a lot of moving pieces to this, isn't there? Like it's all together. It's like a train, and all the cars are connected, and it has massive momentum, the length of the train. It doesn't matter how long it is. And it has to do with perspective and the process of our lives. When that's accepted, then we can more accept the process of others. And I just want to make a note here of age groups. It's interesting, we're in the age of information and enlightenment, or whatever you want to call it. But in the days when I was growing up, and in my younger years as a young mom, I'm sure it was out there, but it was not out there. I'm talking about the help world, or the motivation to shift things. All of the things that we can see on the internet that are helping us grow into whom we are created to be. We hear so many people talking about it, and it's great. It's a powerful force, and it isn't something that's false. It's really people trying to get people into the truth of who they are, mm-hmm. into the way in which they should go. And when we do that, like, I think of my mom, who dreams, and this conversation would never have happened. It would not have happened when I was raising young kids. We were it was just a different mindset. And now we're opening up. And that means, for me, I see, like, I talk to my children way differently than I was ever talked to. And that's no diss on my mom or father. Like, my goodness, where they got to from their process is amazing. And so I say that about myself. Where I have gotten to from where I started is amazing. Where my children will get to is glorious. And
So
then it's all a beautiful story.
so interesting, because I want to honor our parents and our grandparents, because their journey, I mean, was a different era, different time, different world problems. And, you know, I mean, even my journey compared to what your parenting journeys have been like are different times, different generation, and my children. And I was actually I was podcasting about this morning with my girlfriend. Um, and we were talking about how our parents have, like, they learned a lot, and they up the bar from where they were as children, right? So it's like this passing of batons. And so they're they gifted us, their floor became their ceiling became our floor. So
Yeah, that's right.
now my ceiling for my parenting is my children's starting point. So it's like,
Yeah.
we're leveling up, we're leveling up, we're leveling up, and we're giving that ceiling to our children as a starting point. And so I just want to honor um, my parents, because I think too, like, part of my journey has, like, spun back around and been like, well, if you would have raised me better, or not been an alcoholic, or not done this, and it would be very easy to spin around on the generation before us and be like, you hurt me, you put me here, you didn't give me the tools I needed. And it's like, time out. They were actually doing a lot better than they probably were taught.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we don't know all of their story. We know the glimpses we saw as children, but now as we're adults, like, we get to make a difference in our own story. That's what we get to do. And I think that's where, you know, the coaching comes in, because it's like, maybe you've already dealt with all of the baggage and the hurt of the generations past, and the past, is in the past, but the coaching piece really accelerates you into the future, into those dreams. Like, I have a dream and a desire to be a speaker, an author, and a coach. Well, I'm an author and a coach, and I speak on platforms every single day. But that didn't happen 2 years ago. This is all new to me. And so it's like, I have this dream. Now my dream is to give it to other people, to catch them on fire. Like, that, what is your dream? Has your dream been crushed? Like Anne said, has your dream been crushed? Do you have a new dream? Do you have a different dream? Have you pivoted? And I think that's where we're coming in as coaches and saying, you don't have to stay stuck anymore. We get to help you pivot, because people helped us pivot.
Mhm.
And that it's scary. And I loved how you brought in that one step on that footbridge between one field and another can actually petrify someone.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just takes a little bit of hand holding. Like, I'm right here with you. Or, hey, I'm on the other side. Just come to me. Like you would a toddler who's learning to walk. Like, come to me one step at a time. Come on, you can do it. And it's that cheering on. And then when the footbridge becomes a larger bridge. So it makes me think there's this bridge in Austria, and it is called the High Line 169. So if you guys are 179, I believe, and it's a footbridge from one mountain peak to another.
Wow.
And it literally goes over a highway. So you are walking from mountaintop to mountaintop. And my kids took took my best friend across it at night. And
Wow.
my 12-year-old daughter, at the time, she's 13 now, but she had to cheer my best friend along because my best friend was petrified. Like, she was scared of heights. It took a childlike faith
Mm.
in that bridge to be like, it's okay. It's okay. We got this. Come on, Auntie Cisa, we're going to sing. And they sang a song all the way across to keep her mind off of it. I got that song on a message the other day from my girlfriend who was like, this is Lainey and I's song as we cross this bridge together.
Wow.
So you never
beautiful.
know who is going to be your bridge crosser, who's going to cross that with you. So don't underestimate the power of a child.
Mhm.
And how many
And
times have
giving
we,
yourself permission to dream. Because I think one of the things I see with the past generations is they had so many challenges come against them that somewhere there came this little message to their heart, it's better not to dream. It's hard to dream. And so many of us have grown up, especially maybe in Donna and my generation, where it almost feels like I don't have permission to dream. It's too much work. It's too hard. It's like being on that little footpath and knowing it's only a short step to the other, but it just seems like it's too big. And maybe I feel like I don't have permission, or I don't have permission from those around me. And that is where a coach comes in. That's where that person to come alongside you and say, you've got a dream. I see that dream. And I say, it's okay that you have that dream.
Yeah.
I don't fault you for having that dream.
what makes me think of Connie's story from last week? We had an author, Connie came on, and Dream On was the name of her book. And if you missed it, please go back and watch that. And it's also in her book is linked to the Facebook post about it as well. But it is her story. What really stood out to me is that her dreams, she gave them, kind of put them on hold, maybe didn't give them up, put them on hold to follow her husband's dream. And I think we all, as we get older, we might put our dreams on pause for a little bit to follow a different path, to get married or have a kid, or, pursue a different job option that might be able to, foot the bills a little bit better than the dream job. And when her dream got crushed of this perfect marriage and this family that she was going after, this new dream, the part of her story that just really just was like just heartening, but it happens all the time, I feel, is she got divorced. She had to move out of base housing because if you're not a military member, you're not allowed to stay in that housing anymore. So not only did she lose her marriage and her best friend, she lost her house and her children, and she had to go find an apartment. Well, she didn't have a job yet. She didn't have the education yet because she had followed her husband's footpath. And the woman at the rental of the apartment place called her riffraff, pushed her buttons, right? Like, that's what you're talking about, Anne. Like, it was this woman, and they collided. And that word that came out of her mouth, it kind of just rubbed me all week. I've really been thinking about that because we do that to each other, women in particular. We have a tendency to bump into each other's buttons and push them, maybe without even recognizing it because of our own places of insecurity. But we have the option to be like, actually, no, that's going to really make me go after my dream 10 times more. Or you have the option to sit back and be like, yeah, she called me riffraff. That's what I am. And that's your choice. That's on us as an individual. Like, what am I going to do with that? I can either learn from it and grow, or I can let it plant seeds of bitterness. So that bitter or better, like where do we go with that? And with Connie, I mean, it just exploded her dream world. Like she went after it. She moved to Papua New Guinea with 3 kids in tow. And she knew enough to ask them if they wanted to come. So they were all excited to go. It wasn't like she was dragging them. Like, what a story. Like, and that is, I think this is why it's so vital to get around other women that are dreaming as well, because that's going to encourage our own dreams and we can champion each other. From that coaching perspective, it's like, if you don't know how to kind of jostle somebody out of their pit, we have tools for that. Like there are real refined tools that we get to work with that help you walk over that bridge, that help you step onto the bridge to begin with. And so I just wanted to bring Connie back up because her story was so impactful to me last week.
Yeah.
And Anne, as you were talking, I'm like, yes, like it's not just one of our stories, right? It's there's a little bit in every one of us.
Yeah. And we want to be able to dream too, and know how to do that. And no one's taught us how to do that. Right. No one's taught us, if you're an A-type personality, if you are a go-getter, then maybe you're just going to push through. But there's a lot of women that are part of our table that's not your story. You're a very sweet, soft spirit, and not that you can't be one that goes after your dream and not have a sweet, soft spirit. So don't hear me say that. But maybe you're one that your mechanism, your default is to always honor someone else. So you wouldn't just naturally be the one to run to the head of the line if we said we're serving pie. You wouldn't be the first one out there. And so how do you, if you're an empath or you're one who is a softer type of a personality, how do you find your dream if you can't push through? So there's tools. And one of those tools is to actually sit down and allow yourself in a quiet space, a walk in the woods, to actually dream, and then actually pick something up where you can actually write it down. The fact that you're actually picking something up actually spins you into a different spot in your brain. And as a coach, we want to just encourage you to do that, because there is a dream in your heart. It's been there for a long time. And we want to actually see that come out. And so allow yourself that space and then actually write it down. Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts, any other little tidbits that you want to share, Donna?
Yeah, I want to pull a few strings here that I'm listening to. And one, it's about valuing. So valuing, I hear when Kim said, women often do this. Well, it's so true that women have been devalued at an extraordinary level, much more than men have. That's just the way it is. That there's no denying it. But we don't have to stay there, and we don't have to blame anybody for that. But what we can do is recognize that is there. And so we can deal with it. And so that was one thing, valuing women, valuing ourselves, because it's been tried to be robbed from us. So we're going to get it back by valuing, not by, whatever, staying in that mode. The other thing was perspective. It's so true that we are on the roof or on the ceiling of where the past generation got to. And that is a very true statement. But I can tell you that statement also is not a whole truth. And it has done as much damage as it meant to do good. And the damage that it has done has made the last generation feel like, I'm done. There's my ceiling. There you go. And that's not the case at all. It is the value and the linking back to the value that they gave in all that they pursued. And they, in some ways, did dream, because I live in Saskatchewan here in Canada, in the middle of Canada. You're talking like your dog doesn't get lost here because you can see him forever, is what they say. And so there's fields and fields and fields. We're in the breadbasket of the world, so to speak. And they don't take down the buildings that their grandparents or great grandparents put up. They just kind of let them fall down on the land. And I was like, I'm from the East, and I'm like, will you just clean it up? Like, what are you doing here? And I realized they do not remove those landmarks because they are reminders to them of the work. Like, you can't imagine the pioneers landing in this land and dealing with this weather and planting. You're talking, I've seen pictures of 8-horse wide plows, and it's just incredible. And these women that would serve these men in the fields, and they lived in mud huts. Well, so I'm just saying that the value of what they did. So they must have had some way of dreaming to get through all that they got through. So just to know that we do stand on where they got to, but we do not let go of that hand and that value of who and how they served us. And it's a linking of generation to generation. That's the power. And so it's so wrong when we just go past and don't connect these generations backwards and
I
forwards.
love that you say that. I was just talking about quilting. Okay. And one of my girlfriends said, oh, don't use that analogy because women don't quilt very much anymore. That's like for the older generation. So younger people will not recognize what that actually means. And I'm like, on the contrary, actually, that is something that we need to look back on because of what women were doing while they were quilting. If you think about it, and you think about the Saskatchewan landing, my family's from North Dakota. All of my generations before have been quilters. They come in to the same house around a fire and they quilt together.
On a quilting table. They're basically doing this.
Yes,
right here.
This is what they were doing. They were having conversations, they were dreaming, they were laughing. And then you look at our generations now, and we are so often so busy running and chasing and doing and doing and doing that we're not getting together to stitch, to quilt, to giggle, to laugh, to cry because, life is hard and I just need somebody to hear my heart. And, let's just get together and just be together. And that's just not happening on a regular basis anymore. And if it is, my kids' generation, it's on Snapchat and they're putting on filters and they're not being actually who they are. They're showing something about themselves, but we're not really getting to see what's inside of them because it's just it's a fake.
Well, we'll have to shift them, help them. That's the value of our generations, right? So here we are in COVID crazy online.
Yeah.
It has done some destructive things, but here we are. we would have never come together. So again, perspective, shifting the perspective to what is good and what is of value, then you find the value and you can go from there into light, into goodness, into dreaming. It's that pivot. Are you going to pivot into that? Well, our kids have to deal with what they have to deal with. They have phones, they don't have quilts. So we're going to deal with what they've got.
Right.
And we're going to teach them good things in it.
Yes. And I think it is that, like, sweet Connie, and I love her for this, that got on this Zoom call and found her voice, and at 72 years old is like, I'm not going to let technology hold me back.
Yeah.
I'm going
And
to
she was
step out.
just on another Zoom call today, another podcast today. She was over the moon that she texted me today and said, you opened a stage for me, and I'm now on another one this morning. Who would have ever thought at age 72?
Right. And I want to like just say, yes, Donna, like, thank you for bringing that point up about the ceilings, because I feel like so many women, even men, because my dad is not tech savvy, like this is all new to him. But you know what? He got a cell phone a couple years ago so that he can text with his grandkids, because he knew that otherwise he was going to get left out. And
Right.
he wants to speak into their lives. So he went out on a bridge and he took a chance, and we all get to hear every day from texting Papa. Like, Papa texts all the time.
Wow.
But he could have just sat in his chair and did nothing. And he could have felt like, well, the next generation, they don't really want to hear from me. And that is the
Tell me
farthest
this,
thing
Kim.
from the truth.
Who are your biggest cheerleaders in some ways, to as they see you come along? And Anne too, is it not your daughters and your
Oh,
son
yeah.
going,
Oh, yeah.
Mom, that's amazing?
Well, and my daughter did say that to me. She's like, Mom, what you have done in the last year, while the rest of the world was just sitting during COVID, beating like their heads against the wall, like, I could not be more proud that you're my mom. Like,
Exactly.
look what you've done. And I kid you not, we were on the way home from soccer practice. And most of the time, soccer was really frustrating in the fall and she was not enjoying it. But that day, she turned to me and she's like, I am so proud of you. And I was
Yeah.
like, you know, like, that means the world, because she's watching.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she's watching.
And I want to encourage that we, even as the older generation, we don't think that, I mean, Dawn and I, we aren't really that much in the older generation, but we reach out to the younger ones, because I think every generation thinks that, well, the younger ones probably think, well, the older ones, they don't want to hear what we have to say. Like, how do I get on a smartphone? How do I get on a computer? But the same thing, we can't assume that the younger generations aren't looking at us and aren't saying, you know what, you have something that I'd like to hear, or you've done something that I actually want to tell you I'm proud about.
Yeah.
Like, I just think that's so amazing, Kimberly, that your daughter actually said, you've accomplished something like that. Wow, what a young lady that you have raised. Like, kudos go out to her.
Well, we haven't done it all right. So we can just continue to have those prayers coming our way, because we have 3 teens in the house and a preteen. So, you know, and I think that's a big thing too, that generation that is retired, that may feel cooped up, that may feel they don't have a whole lot to offer. You have more to offer than you know. Reach out, pray for people, encourage people. You might be cooped up in your own space, but you can have your voice be heard. And there are days where I just want to call some of the older generation and be like, stop watching the news. Stop quoting the newspapers. Like, stop doing that. And instead just engage with, how's your life, Kim? How are your children? How can I encourage someone else today? Like, I don't really care what's going on in the world on a daily basis. I do. Okay. But what's going to encourage me to get out of my head and get connected to my people is going to be that personal relationship.
Yeah, that's it. Out of your head and into the person's. Yeah. Heart to heart. So good, you guys.
Yeah. And our time is up, but we will continue next week. We have a guest coming next week. Is that correct, ladies?
We have 2 guests coming next week.
Awesome.
We have a lovely coach who is part of our community here and part of the table. You met her last week, Devin Choke. And she is bringing on a lovely friend of hers who deals with blood sugar. So next week, we are going to be looking at how dreaming and pivoting is affected by how we actually are looking after the dream of our body. And so they're going to talk about nutrition, about blood sugar. So we are so excited to have Devin and Dahlia join us next week at the table. It is going to be awesome. Don't miss it. And share it out with your friends.
Yes, absolutely. And feel free to take this and share this with your friends if you found something that you liked in it. Just copy the link and share it on. And we are just so excited to be able to come together as a table and just encourage each other. So thanks for watching today. And
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ladies. It was so nice being with you.
It was nice being with you.
Alrighty.